Connie's success as a business person in and of itself would be pretty spectacular. She became the head of the largest company in Hawaii, right? Now think of that and also recognize the fact that she's a woman. That's never happened before, never.
When you talk about her retiring, it's hard to imagine her being anything but continue to be a key and critical leader in our community, because she's always going to be looking to help people.
She is truly a kamaaina. She is of this land. She has done so many things to preserve and protect the social fabric and the community fabric that is Hawaii. All the things that she's done throughout her career on the nonprofit side, Katsuela Foundation, UH Foundation, Punahou, Kamehameha Schools. She's always thinking about what's important to the social fabric of Hawaii, what makes Hawaii special. In addition to the physical setting that we have, what is the social and community setting?
For her many years of leadership and service, the Historic Hawaii Foundation is proud to honor Connie Lau as the 2022 Kamaaina of the Year.
In the early days of my career, I used to have to almost fight the concept that a corporation should exist solely to generate shareholder profits. And I didn't think that that was the right thing to do. I really thought that if we took care of our communities, our business would naturally grow.
It was something she talked about to investors, she talked about it to employees, she talked to people in the community about it. And that really creates a culture of the company where you're not just thinking about the bottom line, the financial bottom line, but what are the impacts and the value that you're bringing to Hawaii as a community.
All of the decisions she made in business filtered through that notion. She grew up in Kaneohe, went to school here, then went away to Yale and then to law school and then to Stanford for an MBA. So she had been away quite a while when she was young, but her love of Hawaii never left her. And I think that filter became really a critical part of her life.
I really grew up in nature on Kaneohe Bay. And I remember wonderful moments of just lying on my back in the grass and watching the cloud formations or the weather patterns where the rain would come across the bay and you would just see that line of rain marching across the bay. And so those were the things that really resonated in me personally and what really made life here very special. So you can really understand why Native Hawaiians felt that the land and the sea were not things, not pieces of property like you have in the Western system, but they really were alive and they really were kin. And those are some of the things that really mattered to me.
If you think about the pivot that Hawaiian Electric has taken in the last, let's say 5, 6, 7 years, the pivot from keeping the lights on to driving a sustainable future and thinking about Hawaii being able to drive that future, that has been under her leadership.
The engagement not only with scientists and engineers, but with property owners, with community people, with neighborhood organizations, it's that kind of collaboration which allows these really crucial solutions to go forward.
Connie's the kind of navigator that can see over the horizon to say, okay, this is the destination we think we should be going to.
It's just her nature to always look for connectedness and find ways to create synergy so that we can do more in the long term.
When I first was sent over to American Savings Bank, I really wanted to make sure that the senior team understood what I felt about the community. And the only way that you can learn that is you have to go out into the community. And so we went out and we talked to various nonprofit groups, and we did things like work in the Lo'i.
She's the type of leader who's going to roll up her sleeves and be part of service projects, as well as so approachable internally to our teammates as well as to the broader community. And she's very generous in sharing her network, so to kind of interconnect efforts and initiatives to best serve our community effectively.
The first nonprofit that I helped was in the early years when I had just joined the HEI companies and I had become treasurer. A woman by the name of Consuelo Zobel Alger wanted to prevent child abuse and neglect both here in Hawaii and also back in the Philippines, which was her home country. It really resonated with me because it was about children, and I was in my childbearing years and starting to have our family.
The Consuelo Foundation really opened up for Connie and for me as well a whole different world of how other people had dealt with their problems or weren't dealing with their problems. And you realize that there are people here that are suffering the same kinds of disadvantages that are occurring in Mindanao. And I think that can't help but affect you and the way you look at the community.
I think she recognizes and wants to have the environment in which every student can realize their full potential. And we've had lots of discussions about how Punahou needs to be a strong partner for the entire community. The question can't be just what does Punahou do for its own students. The question has to be what does Punahou do in collaboration with the Department of Education, with our public schools, with the Hawaii Community Foundation, with other groups to try to improve the overall quality of education across the state. And for Connie, I think that's really something that comes out of her own lived experience. It's something that she feels deeply about.
My mom, Hyung Hee, grew up on the Big Island until about age 10 and never went to school until the truant officer found her on the plantation and said, "You're old enough to go to school. You should be in school." And then a couple of years later, her father became very ill. And unfortunately, he passed away here on Oahu. And so that stranded my grandmother here with 8 little kids. And my mother was one of the older ones. They grew up in what is today still Palama Settlement. And so my mom always told me, you know, we're really lucky that we were able to build our lives and move out of Palama Settlement. But you always need to remember all those other people who are still there, who want to improve their lives. How do we level those playing fields? How do we give people opportunities, all people opportunities to succeed?
She often was the person in the course of the over 15 years that I knew her and have known her to push me beyond my comfort zone and to encourage me to take on bigger and broader roles than maybe I felt I was qualified for. You know, when you have mentors and role models like that encouraging you, it really does bolster your confidence and your belief in yourself. And I think having role models like Connie, particularly for female leaders, is everything.
Connie really cleared the path for many of us. And I think just by having a female leader at the helm, she kind of set the tone for a lot of people that it's not unusual to have a woman there, and that being a woman is a strength, not a weakness.
One of the things that I have constantly heard from Connie is the importance of listening. You really have to listen and listen and listen some more. And that applies not only to questions of policy or decision making, it applies to really what it takes to make a community function.
So my advice to future leaders is to focus on how you can create value for our communities. And to also think about kuleana. When I think about Historic Hawaii's mission, it's really about preserving, to me, what's special about Hawaii, whether it's the buildings, the architecture, or very special places, the wahipana. The land itself and those kinds of places are really special They're historic. They have incredible cultural value. They tell stories of how things were really wonderful in the past and how you can bring those wonderful things into the future and how you can preserve them for the next generations.